How's it going, guys? I hope you guys are having a great week. So I'm back today with a new video in my top game releases series. Sorry, it's been a couple of months since I've sort of got these videos out there, but I did want to reflect back on the last few months because there have been a lot of really good games, and I also decided to try something a little bit different in this video. So these are the top 10 game releases in June 2024, as well as some reviews of those games thrown in. So let us kick off. The first game that came out in June was Destiny 2: The Final Shape. This, of course, is the 8th annual expansion from Bungie and the culmination of the 10-year Light and Darkness saga, offering a new campaign, new raid, armor sets, and weapons, including a new subclass called Prismatic. It is considered by many in the Destiny community to be a return to form for Bungie after the disappointment of the Lightfall expansion last year. The Final Shape is being touted as one of the best expansions ever released by Bungie, on par with the incredibly popular Witch Queen and Forsaken expansions. Critics seem to agree, scoring it a 91 on OpenCritic. GameSpot scored it a 9 out of 10, saying, and I quote, "With a character-driven story and a focus on enhancing its gameplay on nearly every level, The Final Shape feels like what Destiny 2 has been trying to be all along." On Steam, the game sits at a very respectable 80%, very positive, from 5,121 user reviews. The second game that came out in June was Killer Clowns from Outer Space: The Game. This is an asymmetrical survival horror game developed by Ilphonic and TerraVision Games. It is based on the 1988 film Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It is a multiplayer game in which 10 players play in 15-minute matches. 3 players are selected to control the clowns, whose objectives are to trigger the detonation of the clown apocalypse. The other 7 players control the humans, whose objectives are to escape the map alive using one of 4 escape routes scattered across the map. The game seems to have received a mostly positive response, with critics scoring it a 69 on OpenCritic. Game Rant had a pretty lukewarm response to the game, scoring it a 2.5 out of 5, saying, and I quote, "Killer Clowns is not going to convert anyone who isn't already a fan of these types of games. The game has its moments, but it's unlikely to keep players entertained for all that long." Steam users seem to have taken more of a liking to the game, scoring it 76% mostly positive from 2,911 reviews. The third game that came out in June was Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. This is an enhanced re-release of Shin Megami Tensei 5. The story is split into 2 main routes, with players choosing one at the beginning. The Canon of Creation, which tells the original story of Shin Megami Tensei 5, while the Canon of Vengeance follows the scenario for the original, but with significant changes in the middle and later stages of the story. Vengeance also includes the addition of a new dungeon, along with numerous new quests. Vengeance is considered by many to be the definitive version of the game, and critics agree, scoring it an 89 on OpenCritic. IGN scored it an 8 out of 10, saying, and I quote, "Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance doesn't necessarily make drastic improvements upon the 2021 original, but its new storyline and content additions are reason enough to revisit an already great RPG or start fresh if you missed it the first time." On Steam, the game sits at a very impressive 95% overwhelmingly positive from 3,518 reviews. The fourth game that came out in June was #Blood. Blood is a hack and slash indie dungeon crawler from developer Exit 73 Games and published by Humble Games. With a very cool 90s cartoon art style that reminds me heavily of Nickelodeon's Dexter's Laboratory, you play Becky Brewster, the new kid in town. Her freshman year at Carpentersville High takes a turn for the supernatural after she learns she's the latest in an ancient bloodline of spellcasting vampire hunters. How very Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Becky must hone her latent undead slaying skills in order to save her new home from the impending vampire apocalypse. The game is sitting at a very respectable 72 on OpenCritic and Push Square scored it a 7 out of 10, saying, and I quote, "Blood's not without its drawbacks. Quest objectives can seem vague, the combat takes a while to really get going, and its dungeon design teeters into tedious territory at times. But fun boss fights, a good sense of humour, and an absolutely killer art style can make you forget all about the missteps." While there aren't many user reviews of the game on Steam, the consensus is mostly positive, sitting at 72% from 170 reviews. The fifth game that came out in June was Still Wakes the Deep. This is a psychological horror game developed by the Chinese Room. Played from a first-person perspective, the story follows an electrician who is trapped on a damaged oil drilling platform in the North Sea in the 1970s, having no way to escape while being pursued by mysterious monsters under harsh weather conditions. The game does not feature any combat system, and players must rely on stealth and solving puzzles to survive. Studio co-founder Dan Pinchbeck first pitched the game as The Thing set on an oil rig, and it definitely seems to fit that bill. The game received generally positive reviews, with critics praising the game for its story and atmosphere. On OpenCritic, it scored a 76, with Games Radar Plus giving it a 4 out of 5, saying, and I quote, "This is a great, if short, horror game with impeccable looks and fantastic atmosphere. It's scary and full of character, but with a barely 5-hour runtime, your enjoyment could depend on what you paid for it." On Steam, the game sits at 88%, very positive, from 3,172 reviews. The sixth game that came out in June was Chained Together. This is a 3D platformer developed and published by Anega Games. Connected by a chain, up to 4 players must cooperate to escape hell. Throughout the game, players can find 10 power-ups called wings that allow them to recover from falling. Players may choose a hard mode where lava constantly rises, or an easy mode where there are checkpoints. Reception to the game has been positive, gaining 80,000 players within its first week of release. While the game has yet to be reviewed by critics, it is doing well on Steam, sitting at 89% very positive from 24,907 user reviews. The seventh game that came out in June was Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. This features an all-new story set in the land of Shadow. Shadow of the Erdtree adds new weapons, equipment, weapon skills, and magic not found in the base game, along with new enemies and boss encounters. As DLCs go, Erdtree is pretty beefy, offering 25 hours if you're focusing on main objectives, with completionists expecting to sink a good 50 hours into the game. If critic reactions to the DLC are anything to go by, it has not disappointed. On OpenCritic, Shadow of the Erdtree currently stands at a 94. IGN scored it 10 out of 10, saying, and I quote, "Like the base game did before it, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree raises the bar for single-player DLC expansions. It takes everything that makes the base game such a landmark RPG, condenses it into a relatively compact 20 to 25-hour campaign, and provides fantastic new challenges for heavily invested fans to chew on." On Steam, it sits at a 70% mostly positive from 77,634 user reviews. The eighth game that came out in June was Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition. This is a remaster of the 2003 original, offering 4K resolution and 60 frames per second with improved graphics and audio, a new speedrun mode, updated achievements, and an exclusive anniversary gallery. Considered to be a cult classic, this may be the best and easiest way to experience the game for yourself if you have never played it or want a refresher before Beyond Good and Evil 2 comes out in, 2030 maybe. Critics seem pretty happy with the remaster, scoring it 80 on OpenCritic. Gaming Trend scored it 90 out of 100, saying, and I quote, Beyond Good and Evil is an absolute classic, and the 20th anniversary edition makes it easier than ever to appreciate why. The characters are endearing, the visuals are mostly amazing, the music is incredible, and the gameplay is a ton of fun on top of all that. If this is your first time stepping into Jade's sneakers or your 20th, now has never been a better time to explore the beauty of Hillis. On Steam, the game sits at a 78% mostly positive from 676 reviews. The 9th game that came out in June was Until Then. Until Then is an adventure game developed by Polychroma Games. The game is presented as a visual novel in a 2.5D side-scroller featuring pixel art in a 3-dimensional environment. It is set in the fictional city of Liamson. The game follows Mark Borgia and his moments of deja vu months after the events of a global catastrophe known as the Ruling, which caused widespread damage and casualties across the Philippines. The game received positive critical reception, scoring an 82 on OpenCritic. Push Square scored it an 8 out of 10, saying, and I quote, "In the end, Until This is a bit like a pixelated Life is Strange, and like the best Life is Strange games, it strikes a near-perfect balance between mundanity of everyday life and the joyous and devastating moments that occasionally perforate that normality." On Steam, it sits at a very impressive 98% overwhelmingly positive from 2,270 user reviews. And finally, the 10th game that came out in June was Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. This is a remaster of the 2013 Nintendo 3DS game Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. The game features visually enhanced and updated graphics, which greatly resembles Luigi's Mansion 3. In this visually enhanced adventure, you'll visit the chilling locales of the eerie Evershade Valley, a place where until recently the peculiar dark moon hung in the sky. According to ghost researcher Professor E. Gadd, it pacified the ghosts of the valley. That is until one night when the dark moon mysteriously shattered. Critic responses to the game have been positive, with it scoring a 78 on OpenCritic. Nintendo Life scored it an 8 out of 10, saying, and I quote, "Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is Luigi's Mansion 2 with a fancy HD lick of paint. Surprise? It looks great, and the new models, animations, and revamped visuals make for a game that's close to the glorious Luigi's Mansion 3 in how modern and swish it all is. It also controls much nicer thanks to the second stick on the Switch. It's just a shame we haven't got any added extras, then any new means to save mid-mission, added content or bonuses. This is 100% the best way to play the game as of 2024, there's no doubt, but it would have been nice to get something a little extra, especially given the price point. Maybe we'll get a deluxe edition someday." So there you have it, guys. Those are just some of the biggest releases that came out in June this year, as well as how they were received and reviewed. Please do feedback to me. Let me know what you think of this new style of video, including information on the releases as well as how they were received. I'm thinking of bringing these out at the end of each month as a bit of a reflection on what were some of the biggest releases that month, and some things that maybe you guys hadn't heard about and might introduce you to some new things. So please do feedback. Let me know what you think of this new style, and of course, if you played any games in June that you really enjoyed that were not mentioned here, please do share those in the comment section below as well. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video as always and found it informative. A special shout out to my Patreons and YouTube members for always going the extra mile and supporting the channel. If you do enjoy the content here, then do consider supporting what I do by liking, subscribing, commenting, or going that extra step if you can and becoming a channel member. Everything you do does really count and does really help. So thank you so much for all your support. Anyway, I'll be back again with more videos, most definitely. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys have a great week, of course. Take care, and as always, happy gaming. I should go.